E 12.11. Nuts and Bakeries was organized on January 1st, 2019. During its first year, the company issued 2,000 shares of 50 par value preference shares and 100,000 shares of 10 par value ordinary shares. At December 31st, the company declared the following cash dividends: 2019 5,000, 2020 12,000, 2021 28,000. Instructions: show the allocation of dividends to each of the shares, assuming the preference share dividend is 6% and non-cumulative. Okay, so for these kind of exercises, you may just go ahead and make a table, and the table that you're going to be doing has to look something like this. So you will need all of the years here at the top, and you're going to have the total dividends. In this case, letter A, they're asking us to do non-cumulative, that's why. But if it was cumulative, like for example letter B is going to be cumulative, over here you would write cumulative preference shares and then ordinary shares. Okay, so in our case they said that the preference share dividend is 6% and non-cumulative, so I'm just gonna go ahead and write them 6% over here. Okay, so let's input the information that we have. Over here they said that the company declared these dividends, right? These are total dividends, which means that from these dividends, they're going to divide them into preference and ordinary. So in 2019, the total dividends that were issued were 5,000, right? Over here. And then 2020, 12,000, 2021, 28,000. So I'm just going to go ahead and input these over here. Okay, now taking a look at our table, the first one that we're always going to be doing is always going to be the preference shares, right? So here at the top, do you see they gave us some information? They said that they issued 2,000 shares of 50 preference shares and this of ordinary shares, right? Since we're always going to do the preference shares first, it really doesn't matter this part over here, ordinary shares, because we're not going to be using them. So I'm just going to go ahead and cross it over here because we don't need it. What we needed is this over here. So over here we're going to have 2,000 times that value that was per value. That is going to give me okay, that is going to give me 10,000, 100,000 actually. This 100,000, this is the value that we're going to be multiplying by whatever rate that is over here. So for this one over here, the non-cumulative preference shares, what do? You just do this 100,000 times that 0.06, and that would give you 6,000, right? But you cannot put 6,000. Why is that? Because you only have 5,000, correct? So over here, you're still going to have 5,000. You're going to take all of those dividends away. Consequently, you're going to have 0 ordinary shares because the total was 5,000. Again, for the next year, 2020, the logic is the same. So you would have 6,000, right? In this case, you can't have 6,000 because your total is 12,000. So 12,000 minus the 6,000 gives you 6,000 for the ordinary dividends. Then for 2021, same logic. It was 6,000, right? And then 28,000 minus 6,000, that gives you 22,000 for the ordinary shares. So preference shares, regardless of what the amount is, you see over here we have 5,000, over here we have 28,000. This is the only case that it would be less, simply because we don't have 6,000, but for the rest of it, it would keep on being whatever value you get when you multiply this number by the rate. And then the ordinary dividends, sometimes you might have a 0 if you don't have other dividends, but at the same time you might have more as well. Okay, so this is going to be letter A. For letter B, you basically have to do the same thing, but with cumulative dividends. So if I were you, I would just make another table as well, because otherwise it's very easy for you to get confused. But in this case, if we take a look over here, assuming the preference share dividend is 7% and cumulative. So, like I said, the only part that we're going to be changing is this one over here, the cumulative preference shares. And in this case, it is not a 6% anymore. It is a 7%, right? Okay, so the numbers, the total dividends are going to be the same regardless, right? So we can just copy them over here. 5,000, 12,000, and 28,000, like this. Okay, now the logic over here to calculate these is pretty much the same. You get this 100,000 times the 7%. But let's see what happens when we do so. If you do 100,000 times 0.07, that will give you 7,000, right? But again, do you have 7,000? You do not. You only have 5,000. So just like it happened at the previous number, you're going to have to get all of that money away because originally it was 7,000, right? But then what happened to the extra 2,000? Well, you're missing it, right? And you have to pay them because the preference shares, whoever owned these preference shares, they have the right to receive 7,000. It might not be now, it might be next year, but they have the right to receive this 7,000. So they first get 5,000, and then ordinary shares shall get 0, right? Because there's no dividend left for us to distribute to them. Okay, for 2020, same logic is going to be that 100,000 times that 7%, which is going to give us 7,000, right? And in this case, we can put that 7,000 because we have 12, right? Yes, but let's not forget that we are missing 2,000 from the previous year, which means that we will have to distribute 9,000 because we were missing it from the previous year. And I'm just going to cross it for us to know that we already distributed them. Okay, then 12,000 minus 9,000, that is going to give us 3,000 left to be distributed as ordinary dividends. Okay, 2021, same thing, right? 100,000 times 7%, that gives us 7,000. And then what amount is going to be left for our ordinary dividends? Just 28,000 minus the 7,000, which will give us 21,000. C. Journalize the declaration of the cash dividend at December 31st of 2021 under Part B. Okay, so Part B, this is the table that we're looking for, and we're looking for from the year of 2021. Well, your cash dividends are pretty much saying like your total dividends, right? Because from these cash dividends, you're going to distribute them, you're going to separate them into preference shares or ordinary shares. So you actually have to look at the total amount of 28,000. And since this is December 31st, you're definitely looking at the full amount. So what is the entry that you make when we declare cash dividends? Which year is that? That is 2021. Well, the entry that you make is that you debit cash dividends because they're going up, right? And you also say that your dividends payable are also going up because you have these dividends that you have to pay in the future. And that amount, like I said, it's going to be the full amount of the total dividends of 28,000 for both of them.